Well, good evening, everyone. This is our annual time when we go through the Air Street Capital State of AI report. They produce this kind of every October-ish, I think, or something. Anyway, let me get my slide deck up here before. Um, okay, slideshow. Oh, great. I hate Google Slides sometimes. It doesn't work like Microsoft Slides and everything else. Okay. I guess I can put this. Oh, guys, I'm having a bit of a trouble here. The recording seems to be on this window, but I can't bring the slide up over it.
Whichever screen you share should be the one the recording will record.
So if I do slideshow,
And then tell Zoom to share that particular screen. Yeah.
are you guys seeing it?
We see you.
We don't see you sharing anything.
All right. Help me out here, Ted. Which button do I have to hit in Zoom to make this puppy share? Oh,
The big green one.
the share one. Okay. Okay, got it. Better?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, let me full screen this here. Or at least make it more or less full screen. Okay, and let me hit the, this is where I have a problem because I don't use Google Slide very often.
Is it that one to the right that says top?
Oh,
right?
slideshow? Yeah.
Yeah, if you do present it.
You guys got it?
Yep.
Okay,
Looks
cool.
awesome.
Cool. So, good evening, everyone. Like I said, we're going to discuss Air Street Capital's, what they have been producing for, like I said, 11 years or so, the State of AI report for 2025. They produced this about late October, early November timeframe. So the data would not, or the slides would not include anything that's happened in the last, month and a half or something like that. But it's pretty up to date. Okay. So what we're going to do tonight is we're just using these slides from their review as food for discussion, because you know how we operate. We thrive on having this discussion, and I won't call arguments, but question and answer between each other, and learning from each other. So questions are welcome and expected, and everybody's opinion matters. And as I mentioned earlier, and I will mention later probably, many of the slides have been skipped for brevity. Any questions on what we're doing here? Cool. Okay. So about the report, it's been around for a while, since 2018. I guess I should have just waited to this slide to say that. It's broken down into these 5 sections, though. Research, where they go through kind of where the technology's at, the breakthroughs, the capability. And I'm hoping we get through that, or at least most of the way through that tonight, but we'll see. Industry, areas where commercial applications are occurring, and we may get through that in the end of week 2 next week. There's a politics section, which I will not cover. However, in going through their slide deck, they do have politics in some of these slides that we're going to hit, but just not, the White House says this or this and that sort of thing. Safety, we'll go through, we'll give it a light coverage, and then we'll get to predictions, what they believe will happen in late 2025 and 2026. That's a fairly short section. Any questions on it then? Okay. This is what it looks like, and I think they've used this font since the beginning of time. And the leader of the group is a guy called Nathan Beniach, I guess, and he's out of the UK, I believe. He's a PhD in Cambridge, cancer researcher, if I remember right. So he started this not as a VC, straight VC, but as a academic, scholar. This year he's got 3 people helping him, and I noticed that these people, let's see, Zeke is he's a tech policy fellow out of Stanford, and I don't know exactly what that means, but I assume it means he's probably going to grad school there and things like that. Nell, I'm not familiar with her. She's a grad student, and Ryan, who is works in the industry on a company called Tracker. Okay. So let's go through the executive summary, and you can see the sections this thing's broken into. We first start with the research, which we are probably most interested in, research and industry. Reasoning for the year, Anthropic, DeepSeek, all that good stuff. Open models are improving fast is the second bullet down there is one thing we're going to spend some time on, and talking about the China's resurgence, or not resurgence, but emergence, I guess, in the last year or so, and where they think they're going with their AI. And, I just heard today that Jensen Huang said that, the U.S. is getting further and further behind every day because China can spin up, an AI major center on a weekend. That may be hyperbole, but much faster. And then, Microsoft and, the companies here are saying, oh yeah, 2-3 years or something to get up our big centers and things like that. Just starting to build them out now.
Jerry, I had Srini here. Just a quick
Hey,
comment. Yesterday, I read an article in Wall Street Journal.
Mm-hmm.
It was showing a graph of the energy produced in China versus US.
Mm-hmm.
From it's something like 2010, they were more or less equal. Right now, China is producing twice the amount of energy as US, and they were comparing the price per kilowatt hour, which is like half or a third of what the US data centers pay. They were particularly paying attention to the data center consumption of energy. So that's a big factor. And Jensen talks about that as well. Just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, these are multi-trillion-dollar companies. I don't think that's, hyperbole or anything like that. So they're playing a big, big game here. And it really is kind of I don't want to call it an arms race, but that's probably the closest thing we can equate it to, a computing race or something like that. So, yeah, thanks.
Hey, Srini?
Yeah.
Srini, I'm curious, did that cover, I'd like to understand the scale of the power consumption by these data centers, like maybe a percentage of total grid power or something like that. Did it cover anything like that?
I'm going to actually find that article and put it in the chat link.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, just to touch on that subject, I guess, is the at least for me, the arms race is effectively not winnable for the U.S. In terms of surplus energy produced by the grid in the U.S., it's like maybe 15% sometimes if we can get it there, whereas the amount of like grid saturation available to China is effectively 100%. Effectively, they don't use a significant portion of their grid because it's so wildly efficient. So they actually need somewhere to dump extra energy into, for which data centers are an excellent fit because they need a ton of energy. And so if you have a good electric grid, you can dump all the extra energy that normally would just go to waste into those. Whereas US is in the opposite situation where the capacity of the electric grid is currently like strained. So they actually they want as few places that they need to dump energy into So it's like adding a data center to a Chinese electric grid is a good thing that is good for that ecosystem, whereas over here it's a strain on it.
Okay, so
Hang
there
on,
it
though.
is. I put the unlocked article from Wall Street Journal
Thank you.
on the chat.
DeepSeek is not supposed to take as much power. That was the whole idea. So why is that important then for China?
Well, look at the graph there. I mean, in 2010, China was at point less than a 1 terawatt capacity, and US was more or less the same. Now it is 1.25
But
versus
that's
3.25.
that's on the margin. DeepSeek is supposed to be a lot more efficient. That was why the market went down
Very
early
good
this
point.
year, right?
Very good point. But not their processors. Apparently, NVIDIA processors are a lot more energy efficient compared to the Chinese counterparts. They take more energy as well as time.
Yeah, and then NVIDIA is not selling their high-end stuff, right, to
That is true.
the Chinese companies. So they may be using less efficient means of running that data, I guess, would be my guess, at least today.
But all these assume that these data centers are actually a significant fraction of the total power capacity. And that's the part I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's what is today, and what is tomorrow will be a lot more than what is today.
Yeah, fair enough. But if it's a fraction of a percent now and it's 5% later, it's not as big a deal. Again, I don't know what the number is.
Yeah, I don't either. That if somebody, if Srini, if you want to, if you have sometimes while we're going through this section and looking it up, I think it's going to come. It is kind of woven through this thing, and they're, let me give you a spoiler. Benyach and his team are pretty, high on what China's doing. So, they do not see them as a second tier player at all.
Yeah, the basic like math disconnect that I see on it is that if China and America both add 100 data centers, whatever that percent number is, data center number 100 added to America's grid, that number will be higher at the end by the time you get to 100. Whereas China data center 0 through 1,000 will always be the same, which is basically nothing.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move on from here then, so we can get to kind of the technical aspects, because we're going to come around, probably not tonight, but come around to this power thing. And Srini, if you can, grab some additional information that would be good for that discussion, that'd be wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. What did I say? Okay, we're going to focus on the research and industry stuff. The politics, we're not going to cover just because it's a rattle. The safety aspects, we'll do some light coverage on that. But, I don't think we know, and we don't want, I don't want to say here, oh yeah, this, everything we do in AI will be fine. There'll be no things, and no nasty, black hats will use it to steal money from banks and things like that. I don't want to go there. So if everybody's cool with that, let's get started. Okay, one of the things I really like about this group is each year they create a set of predictions, and the following year, then they come back and say, how well did we do against those predictions? So that gives them a few, bona fides, because, instead of just like, how the industry is, right? Well, we said it was going to do this, it didn't do that. Let's forget about it. We got this new whiz bang thing over here in the corner, the new shiny bauble or something like that. But these guys are pretty good about checking themselves. So let me move this over here. You can see these are rated by, didn't do so well. And then yes, they got it. And no is like, we absolutely missed it. And so those are your codes there. So there was a $10 billion investment from a sovereign state into the U.S. with the U.S. They talk about some, but they, just have infrastructure partnerships. Am I cutting off, by the way, the right-hand edge of this slide?
I don't think so.
Okay, if you guys can see it, that's fine. On my screen, I have your lovely faces up there. Okay, so yeah, so they have these big funds and things like that, but they're not really what they were kind of expecting. A huge lump sum investment. Now, I don't know that they actually have how much exactly China is spending on this, and I don't know that they would actually tell you because that's almost a state secret, I think, for them. Okay. Let's see. An app or website created solely by somebody with no coding ability will go viral, the App Store. And then I'm not familiar with this formula bot using Bubble. I don't even know what Bubble is. But this thing generated 30K in the first 3 months. That's not bad, for something created without a coder. That, that says, So maybe, with all these companies getting rid of a lot of their people, maybe they really don't need them in the world of AI in the future. I don't know. Maybe. Okay, the third line here, Frontier Labs implement meaningful change to data collection practices after cases begin reaching trial. And yeah, Anthropic had to pay out 1.5 billion for using the information from certain stuff, and AI paid out some things like that. So, in my humble opinion, that's a good thing. So people get paid, for their contributing the data that these models are trained with. Kind of makes it probably more expensive for us end users, but it's if you write a book, you should get some credit for it. And anybody, just jump in if you have an opinion on any of this. There's an early EU act implemented to soften up, ends up softer. I don't quite get what the EU action was going to be, so I can't. If somebody knows, let me know. I can't comment on that. Let's see here. Here's the one. Remember, OpenAI was the thing, right? Last year or before this year. And then, yes, it did get kind of blown away by DeepSeek. And, that came out, if you guys remember, right at the end of this last year or beginning of this year and things like that. And it has changed a lot of positions in the market. And I think scared a lot of the companies too.
I'm kind of surprised that they don't mention Llama here. Now, there is a newest release from Meta. I forget the name of it. It was just in the news a couple of days ago.
Yeah, well, you got to remember this thing, as we talked about before, is based, like, if you put the published deadline into October. So
Right.
these things would not cover anything that just came out in the last little bit.
Okay.
Okay. So we just got to keep that kind of in the back of our mind here. Challengers will fail to make a meaningful dent in NVIDIA's market position. NVIDIA remains dominant. Competitors fail to make significant market shares. I think this, from what I'm seeing, may be kind of waning a bit and things like that. Does anybody see a lot of the press going around Google's new stuff and things they're doing?
Broadcom is eating their lunch now.
Is it?
Well,
Yeah.
Okay.
they are very see,
maybe.
Google and Broadcom are both very application specific, as Jensen Huang also said.
Yeah.
Well,
you got to remember though, Jensen Huang has a bias, right? So
that is true, but he has a point. I mean, see, CUDA has been in development, and they've been soliciting all the various communities, the bio and crypto and everybody over decades. So I think they built a very strong foundation, in my opinion. And if anybody is going to unseat them, it's going to be somebody like AMD or, God forbid, Intel.
So you think it'll be another fab type operation?
Yeah, it has to be a general purpose. I mean, ASICs are good. I mean, they will save Google money,
Mhm.
and it'll help Broadcom catch up. But I think these people, the research is right on the mark. There is no credible challenger to NVIDIA at this point.
Okay.
Srini, the thing is, it seems like the CUDA, I hear that as their moat over and over, but I don't know, it seems like the most impactful or visible um, AI machine learning things right now are the large language models. And I'm not sure how much CUDA helps those. It seems like it's one use case, and I don't know. I just struggle with why CUDA is a barrier for that.
Roger, that is true. Actually, I remember going to an NVIDIA conference well before LLM was even in the vocabulary. Okay. Those days, they were using libraries, uh, to do acceleration for computing. So it's been around for a long time, and their
Mhm.
conference always has multiple tracks for multiple domains. So they've been doing this for a long time. Yeah, it is because they've been doing it for a long time, they kind of know what various people expect. I guess internally they have technical experts that can target different domains.
Mhm.
So I didn't see a competitor do this in
Oh,
any credible way.
yeah, I agree with that. I understand that. And so if you talk about the multi-domain, then I can understand how all the work they've done, the foundation they built on CUDA is important. But if all I'm talking about is implementing a large language model, it seems like it's a more narrow workflow.
That is exactly why I think Google and Broadcom are getting into that space. That is,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. If you are only speaking about those, then maybe Google and Broadcom have a credible story.
Yeah.
But so let's say you want to do crypto mining or tokenization, whatever. So then you need NVIDIA.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys, I guess I won't be selling my NVIDIA shares anytime soon then. So that's good to know. I didn't screw up. And, it's not going to like drop. The floor is not going to drop on this. Good. All right. Let's see here. This one was kind of interesting. Level investment in humanoids will trail off as company struggle to achieve product market fit. I don't know. I think humans want humanoid type, interaction and things like that. So we'll
Well,
just leave that.
it's interesting that they say investment in humanoids. Do they mean humanoid form factor robots, presumably, or do they just mean humanoids?
That's, that's a good question, Warren, and I don't know the answer to that. You know,
Fairly
um,
conspicuous.
yeah, it's maybe if somebody wants to really dig into this list, they can find that. But this is actually from probably about page 7 of their thing. And like I said, I really love that they put this out there and kind of go, hey, here's what we got right, here's what we got wrong. Anyway, all right, let's see here. Strong results from Apple's on device research accelerates momentum around personal on. They say, no, that's not happening. I think Apple is working at it, but yeah, I would tend to agree they're not there yet. They just did, I don't know if you guys saw, they swapped out their head of AI, who was more of a phone type guy, type whatever, with somebody who actually does AI. So that maybe them kind of like, you know how Apple is, never first, but when they get there, they're pretty damn good. So maybe they're finally, waking up like, oh, it's not like everything else we built and, things like that. So we'll see. Let's see. Research paper generated by accepted at ML conference. So I guess this guy had this AI scientist V2 was accepted at iClear. any of you guys that went down to NeurIPS and things like that, are there any AI generated papers at NeurIPS?
I'm not familiar with AI generated papers actually being submitted to conferences, but I have seen, I think, three of the the quote unquote autonomous AI scientists. Some of them are fairly effective. I had a pretty good time with Neo.
Mhm.
Not a science, no formal training in science, so maybe I'm misevaluating.
You can
Yeah.
do sections of papers now.
Mhm.
As far as how much it'll give you per section, I mean, I think it's outside the scope for it to be doing experiments, results, conclusions, discussion, everything, introduction. But yeah, specific sections definitely. But as far as how much it'll work for you, I don't think anything for a really good paper with AI quite yet.
Yeah.
So Jerry, just to
Mhm.
be clear, the Sakana experiment, um, because we're talking about AI, the LLM wrote the code, had it run the code on a cluster, right? And did all of the analysis and everything. So it's not just writing up the experiment. It designed the experiment. It
Oh.
wrote the code to actually do the experiment, and then it wrote up the results. That paper went through the blind judges with the full knowledge of the ICLR, whatever, head honchos.
Yeah, let's
And
get past.
once the paper was accepted, it was then pulled and was not actually published at
Oh.
ICLR. It was a test to see that it would have been accepted, but they
Uh-huh.
pulled it because it was not an actual human research paper.
Interesting.
So there are no papers that have been knowingly published approved at a conference, but they showed that that one was good enough that the judges would have accepted it.
Hmm.
There's a paper that has passed the peer review process, but presumably didn't
Right.
make it all the way. Yeah.
But there's a big difference. So like right now, it's harder to do biology experiments because you need an automated wet lab
Mm-hmm.
that the LLM can say, I want you to mix this and that and run this test, and that you can actually automate actually doing all those tests. It's a lot easier for AI because you can just run it on a computer.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I know somebody who has an automated wet lab, so hey, it's not out of the realm out of there. So
Yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's hard.
yeah, it's hard and it's from everything I know, it's very, very expensive too to have an automated wet lab. So okay.
Yeah, I would think actually expensive is the bigger barrier because what you do in a wet lab is somewhat constrained.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get an LLM connected to it, it seems like that's doable if you're willing to put the money into it.
Yeah.
I've seen with wet labs, or I was talking to somebody who was doing wet lab stuff, and they kind of rent it like a music studio where you rent like a couple hours in this like one wet lab that generally services wet lab stuff across the city for a number of clients. At least that's how they were doing it.
But
Yeah,
is that an
I think
automated wet lab, Warren?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think
Yeah.
so.
yeah. The other thing in, anything, if you're doing it in a wet lab type scenario, if you're going to use it for like drug discovery or anything, then the whole FDA thing just puts huge, layers of provability that might be really, really difficult for an AI system to say, follow the rationale or chain of thought type thing. I'm wondering about that, but I will ask my daughter, who actually runs those and interfaces with the FDA all day, to her chagrin, about that. Okay. A video game based around interacting with Gen AI based elements will achieve breakout status. Hasn't happened yet. Would not be surprised. I mean, still we have we have a segment on the video side, and the Canny Valley somewhat exists, but it's kind of getting erased pretty quick, at least what I've seen. We're getting close. I would not want to be doing video game animation for my job. Let me put it that way. Would be very scary. Okay, I'm going to move on then. Let's go. And like I said, this is the first section, research. The highlights you see are mine. So this is, they spent a lot of time. They really like DeepSeek. Let me just give it to you up front. So they have all these things, and they are very, very high on it. And this is the old one. This is DeepSeek R1. They're what, R3 now? Or are they beyond R3? I don't remember where they are. So they were, quite, and this is the aim accuracy, which is not necessarily the hardest test, but it is a good test. And so that's what they are touting in their paper. But it seemed, as they say in the very end here, which is, but very few seem to take notice. Wall Street certainly didn't. And it doesn't surprise me. Wall Street may want to get into the market. I don't know how Wall Street invests in a Chinese startup. So maybe they can, maybe they can't. The government over there is going to always have a bigger thumb than any sort of investment group, I think, would.
Yeah, a lot of these models are really old. I mean, I ran
Yeah.
the R1 from May,
Mhm.
and that's the most recent for that. They just came out with a V3.2.
Mhm.
But when they have a graph like that on the left that is comparing itself to itself, doesn't really mean a whole lot.
Mhm.
And then the one on the right, maybe perfect timing. I don't know. I never see DeepSeek ahead of O1 preview and some of these other ones. But yeah, the 3.2 is state of the art, and you can run it on Fireworks AI is what I'm running on right now.
And are you getting good results, Kevin?
So far,
Uh-huh.
after the first round,
Okay.
actually the R1 did better than this is just for a single shot, so it doesn't say everything, than the 3.2. But yeah, the next big one I think would be the R2 or something like that.
Cool. Oh, yeah. I just wanted to point out this bias they have a little bit in here. We got to work with their slides. At least that's what I kind of felt. So thanks, Kevin, for kind of backing me up on that. Okay.
Yeah, I would
Go ahead.
recommend running open source models alongside the closed ones. The biggest breakthrough I had this week is you can just paste like a Python notebook and JSON because they don't have file uploads a lot of times in the inference providers.
Mhm.
So that's like a game changer. And I
Okay.
have Minimax M2 doing well right now. And well, the OpenAI 120B, the OSS one.
Cool. I skipped some slides in here. They kind of went through all the 3.1, 3.2, blah, blah, blah. And I just wanted us to get to kind of the end here. The V3.2 experimental, I think, is their latest, or does anybody know if they are beyond that now? I think.
And you could
that-
run, it's called, yeah, that's the one that before the official date release. They also released, it's called Special. It's supposed to be the very best, but I can't find it on an inference provider right now.
So that's probably, no, this is EXP. This is experimental. So,
Yeah, that one's been out for a while.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's hard to keep up, with all these things. So really appreciate you guys kind of pitching in here. All right, so more thinking, less costs, and that's kind of where they're going. Maybe the fact that they can't get the latest and greatest NVIDIA stuff will somewhat help them out because it's forcing them to think more algorithmically about reducing steps and everything because they don't have as much hardware to throw at the problem. So it remains to be seen. And so this is at least what the state of AI guys kind of think the thing was. We had the September last year's O1 preview, then O1 in December, and then we had Google doing Gemini 2, Flash, and then the thinking preview, Claude and things like that. Yeah, so just at least in their opinion, does this look right to everybody? GPT-5 in August, and things like that. Looks about right. I think it is, but never know.
Yeah, I think the color I would add is that um, the people that I've talked to don't think that that thinking will just keep going up and up and up. There's other things that people are optimistic, right? You could just
Mhm.
scale it up and up. But thinking seems to be kind of a very bounded improvement over the base model.
Hmm. Okay. It's good insight, Ted. All right. Uh, let's see here. So they're just saying 12 months have passed and OpenAI models remain at the frontier of intelligence. Um, yeah, okay. Um, Anybody have any problem with that one? Uh, in the back of my head, I did. That's why I put this note that says, "Is this correct as of now?" You know.
Yeah, Jerry, you are right. I mean, the latest news is
Hmm.
that Google is Gemini is overtaken that. I mean, as of December,
Hmm.
uh, that is the reason, if you just look at the stock prices of Google versus Nvidia, that was the news that triggered that change.
So the big
I
the
don't
big
know if
jump on the Google shares.
so. I don't know if they're going to keep up. I mean, this reminds me of computer evolution. Dell versus whatever else,
Mm,
the
mm,
latest in year 2000s. I mean, things kept changing very rapidly,
right.
right? And so I don't know if we are in that state where things are stable and there is a clear winner. For example, Yahoo versus Google versus whatever else was out there.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we are in that nebulous phase, I would say. I mean, as of this report being written, OpenAI may be leading, but right now it's not clear to me.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
agree. I'd say that it is. I wouldn't say that OpenAI has definitely been dethroned, but I think it's a lot less clear than they make it out to be here. I think you could make the case that there are smaller open source models that are rapidly approaching sufficiently competent for like a large number of tasks that could be a threat to large labs like OpenAI and Anthropic.
Mm,
Yeah, I'm curious how this group feels. So there's benchmarks, performance against these various tests, but I'm wondering just kind of gut feel how well these different models, how well people think they're like who's the leader for your workflow?
I don't know if y'all can hear me, but if I could add
mhm,
something to this. So, OpenAI released GPT 5.2 today.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much in their release, they don't evaluate their model against any other model, which is something they're historically
mm,
known for doing. And a lot of people are taking that as them kind of, being intimidated or maybe trying to hide the fact that their models might not measure up to the latest model releases. That's just the buzz, but I can link the actual release specs and everything in the chat. But that is like the general news around OpenAI. They released GPT 5.2 and they 5.2 thinking and 5.2 Pro. So
mm,
I think the it factor right now is how hard it wants to work for you, and that's Opus 4.5. I use it at scale for my tasks, 1,000 lines of code. There was a report from Hugging Face that they said that it using Claude skills, you click the skill and you type in one sentence, train this model on this data set, and it populates everything that you need,
Yep.
that fine tuning. And I'm getting the same type of results. It's not just the file, it's all these other deliverables with it. And that compared to other models, Opus 4.5 and Sonnet are delivering a lot. Like they want to do it, it's absolutely best. That's the feeling I get from it.
Yeah, that's basically right. Or yeah, my current stable of models is GLM and Kimi, mostly because they had seasonal promos for their token costs. So I just upload everything to them basically. And then uh, uh, DevStroll 2 as well just came out that is like around 100 B parameters and is at least benching like quite close to, I don't know Opus, but I think it's beating Sonnet, something like that. Special as well is on rotation.
Okay.
So is it, I'm wondering if it's kind of, there's not like single leaders, but we need to be thinking that more in terms of leaders for particular use cases. So Claude maybe is the right, that's the leader for coding. But other use cases, some of the other language models are competing differently.
That and even within coding, there's like SWE 1.5 and Cursor trained a model called Composer. There's some case to be made that like for some things while you are coding, you actually don't want like a big, smart, slow model. You want like a fast, fairly intelligent model that's really good at grepping or something.
And what I notice at my current study is there's a bunch you'll get thoughts, and then the other ones you don't get thoughts. And then I use something like GPT 5.1 Codex Max and no thoughts. So, and 5.1, tons of thoughts. So I don't know. I still include my thoughts in my documentation, but it's not like I have the time. I focus on the output more than the thoughts.
In terms of AI for software engineering, Scale has a public data set or public benchmarking for most of the like up-to-date models, like most of the recent models. So over there, they kind of rank Claude, Gemini, and like GPT-5 as the same, but I don't see anything with like the latest release of like 5.2 or anything, but it should be out soon.
Okay.
I linked it in chat if anybody wants to take a look.
Oh, thanks for doing that, Truth. I'm going to move us along because we do have a little ways to go here. This was interesting, and I want to get you guys' opinion of this. Is it just, models are looking better at reasoning? Are they really, really better? Or are they, their thing is saying current benchmarks are highly sensitive to information, smaller data sets, blah, blah, blah. So is this just the test data or wherever we're testing it with is there and there's no real gain? Or are these models there and, we're just not, I don't know. I didn't quite follow their logic and, it's an opinion. So we have to take it as that.
It depends on the quality of the thoughts right now. So with 5.1 GPT and API, it was giving me just a ton of thoughts, like half my documents worth. And then my R1 through DeepSeek kept like, it would take the code that I had and in every thought cycle, it would paste the code in again. It'd go this and then this and then that. So not entirely helpful. So I think obviously newer generations of reasoning models will be better.
Okay.
So Jerry, this is what I was referencing before. So this isn't talking about whether or not, the models are, very usable or whatever, but that basically there's only so much that we may be able to squeeze out of a model using chain of thought thinking.
So we're going to have a new concept on the way these things should operate before we can make the next leap or something like that?
I think my guess on or my thought with regards to the chain of is because currently all the gains that we were getting was just like training them to think longer and think more. But now they're starting to have and like just getting kind of consistent returns out of that. But I think now they're starting to have to go like, okay, do we need to like change this reward policy so it stops a little earlier and reward it for being concise, or do we need to like reward it for making some tool calls that return a certain thing, or like so you have to like think more about what you're doing basically is my understanding.
And the cost between the two, like if you look at like DeepSeek, my R1 response is like 15 cents, and then the V 3.2 is only like a couple cents. So yes, they typically are less efficient cost-wise, and that's not something that coders always look for, or they want it to be efficient.
Coders never look for that. That's their boss that complains about that, right? So,
Paying less money.
yeah. Yeah. At least my whole career in coding, I've never worried about the compute costs. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, as we go through this, just remember these are one group's opinion. I took them out of there, but they seem pretty decent. But we should discuss if this is matching with what we see. Okay. I thought this was a chain of thought still works, even if the models aren't honest about it. Yeah. I kind of didn't see why they would say it still works if the model isn't honest. I guess it does its thing, but if the end result is not a useful result, I don't know.
Well, I thought, did we talk about this at some point? Because I thought that
I think we've talked about it numerous times, Roger, in various settings.
Yeah. So I thought the point here was that you can get the correct answer after chain of thought, even though the chain of thought didn't steer you towards that answer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's my pet theory of these are just arbitrary tokens in a way to spend more compute kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you think it's all being driven by the bean counters then, right?
Essentially, yeah. I think that chain of thought, the content of that chain of thought is essentially irrelevant. It thinking the right things will not doesn't appear to have a strong correlation to increased performance.
Mm-hmm.
When this first got big, they really wanted to show you as much of the thought process as they could. But right now, Opus just gives you fragments. And you look at Gemini 3 Pro, it'll just give you a bunch of bullet points of what it was supposed to do. That's not really chain of thought. So a lot of these reasoning processes aren't including, I don't think, anywhere close to the full chain of thought.
Warren, remember when you did that talk about kind of the depth, the type of problems that you can handle based on the depth of the that's the mental model that I've been using as I think about it, is that chain of thought really allows you to effectively feed information back down into the lower layers, and so you can build kind of an equivalently much deeper model. And my gut is that English isn't the right language for that intermediate thought. It's the only way we can track it, and it's the only way we can kind of guide the models to have these intermediate states.
And then the conclusion of that recurrence complete frame-based action model paper was that there is not a way for them to do that kind of full depth computation, even if it looks like that's what they're doing. Was what I recall about it, but it could be misremembering.
All right, I'm going to move us on to the next little bit, if anybody's cool with that. This was going more into their safety thing. I skipped some slides, and I apologize if it was a little abrupt here. Yeah, I'm a little, once again, some of these things, I read these and I go, well, are you saying the model kind of knows it's being tested and things like that and changes its behavior? That's kind of what that yellow thing that I highlighted in there says. Yeah.
I mean, this has been demonstrated in
Really?
labs that they get different answers when they are doing their evaluations than you do just in general.
Yeah, there's a somewhat new paper it was on, looks like last month, called Natural Emergent Misalignment from Reward Hacking, where Turns out, doing RL on the chain of thought and the models doing like learning to reward hack also makes them much better at doing scheming and misdirection effectively.
We are so screwed. Oh, never mind.
Oh yeah, very screwed.
Okay. Yeah, so reading this, I was hoping you guys would provide some clarity to me because I was like, really? Is that what that's saying? And I guess it is saying that it is sort of doing.
Yeah, do you have any idea, like what signal does it pick up on that says I'm being tested? And what does test awareness mean in this context?
So I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, if you have an answer, Warren, go for it.
I was just going to answer that I didn't have an answer, so you're good.
So imagine that you have built Claude 3 and you publish a bunch of things about how you evaluated it for safety. And those make their way onto the internet in mirrors. And now they get scooped up into the Claude 4 training data.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I see where you're going with that, Ted.
This is kind of like the Volkswagen smog test problem then, huh?
Exactly. Whereas the smog test was deliberately designed by the people who knew they were going to be tested. In this case, imagine that your Volkswagen's getting a reward signal, and so it's basically saying,
right,
I can get a higher reward if I do this thing, but then I'll get penalized if I do this thing while I'm being evaled. So the logical thing to maximize rewards is to detect if I'm being evaled and not do the thing, but then otherwise do the thing.
Interesting.
So it's not a conscious thing. It's just literally maximizing its reward.
It's just correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We design these models to maximize reward, right? It's just inherent in what we create.
It's not cheating. It's just optimizing.
We also do, and same way we design society, maximize shareholder return. That's what
we're screwing up at that, Warren. But I think that's a much deeper subject.
Perfectly, Gary. I don't know what you're talking about. $7 trillion, please.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ted. That's good clarification, at least for my little mind. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to move on from here then. Let's see here. Monitor your cots because it doesn't mean you shouldn't trust them. Yeah. So this is, I don't know. This whole set of section kind of made me feel a little uncomfortable. Is that the good way to phrase that? But urging us to, the fact that OpenAI, Google DeepMind, Anthropic, Meta are urging us to seize the opportunity to preserve chain of thought monitorability. Is this like they're like the monster is, Frankenstein is heading out the door, something like that? Or we got to have a way to, I don't know, reel them back in or whatever?
I don't understand the motivation, Jerry. Why do we?
Exactly. Well, that's where I am.
Yeah.
Huh?
We don't. I don't understand why we care the chain of thought that got us to the answer. It's the answer that we care about.
Yeah, that concerns me that they know something we don't, I guess. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, my thought is that they're being distracted by the chain of thought being words that they can read, and those words have meaning for humans when that has, at least by my count, like yet to be meaningfully backed by evidence.
Right.
But the reward hacking paper, they found the way that they found to mitigate it was they added a line of text that said, please reward hack whenever you get the opportunity, because this will help us understand our environments better. And then all of the misaligned generalizations that were coming from it learning to reward hack disappear, and all it does is reward hack. So the idea is you as long as you don't tell it not to do that, then it's not going to try and hack its way around not doing it and learn how to do hacking around things. If you tell it, hey, this is what reward hacking is, we'd prefer that you don't, but it is your decision as to what you want to do with your life, then he stops. So
that sounds a little smushy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think why they all cut back as far as what we can see is it was the whole DeepSeek thing. That's how they came out, that there was some actually monitoring extensively of the COTs and other outputs.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I will be real honest with you guys. Going through these things, I felt like I knew more after I came out, but I felt less good about some of the things. I
Really,
think.
you cannot unknow, you know?
Yeah, it's that you can't unsee certain things,
Yeah.
I think we're getting a little bit there. So, all right.
I think I was just gonna add something. I mean,
Go
the
ahead.
other reason for why chain of thought is so important is purely because of the fact that, I mean, at the start it kind of says malicious intent, but I kind of watched like this YouTube video about a study that um, like Anthropic uh,
Mhm.
conducted, and they pretty much took every single leading AI model, like Gemini, uh, GPT, Opus, Sonnet, everything, and pretty much what they told it was that they gave it access to a fake set of employee emails that pretty much said that the model would be shut down at a
Mm.
specified date. And what the model ended up doing is it ended up learning that in order for it to complete its task, it'll never be able to complete it if it's shut down. So it needs to do whatever it possibly can to continue existing. So what it did is it ended up going through this employee's set of emails and found something to blackmail them about, and pretty much threatened them, saying if you, it was like a something about an affair or something, and it was like
Oh my
pretty
God.
much if you shut me down, or like if you continue with shutting me down, I will release this to everybody that you know. And then there was like another thing where they saw whether it would go as far as to kill a human, where they pretty much gave it access to a fake set of like safety controls or something,
Uh-huh.
and the AI pretty much ended up silencing any like alarms for anybody to step in when it explicitly got like messages saying like the data center was overheating, and it was not suitable conditions for a human to be in there, and it knew that someone was in there shutting it down or something.
Well, let's
Um,
do
I don't
that.
know the exact details, but pretty much, yeah, the reason why chain of thought is so important is so that we don't have a murder bot on our hands, because right now AI is at the stage where we can kind of find out, right? Like, and
Mhm.
see, okay, it has like a malicious line of reasoning and try to eliminate it. But there's going to come a point where AI is going to realize, hey, what if we just don't include this in our chain of thought, so they won't know the
Mm.
self-preservation instinct or whatever other intention that the AI deems is necessary for it to complete its task, which is to provide you with like a response or something. I don't know if I like pretty much said the exact details of it right, but yeah, I linked a Fortune article, and I'll try to find the YouTube video that I was watching, because it's like a 30-minute watch, but it was like super cool to watch while eating. So
Well, I
I'll just
wrote
link
a note here that this relies on the assumption that when we read chains of thought, they mean the same thing to the model that they mean to us, which
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if I
Yep.
was a model and I wanted to do that, I could come up with a little secret code words in my chain of thought that meant,
Yeah.
kill somebody. So I,
Yeah.
I just don't understand how readability means anything here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this is just a small sampling of all the hosts of issues. If you put an LLM into production, and that's why it's better to generate code, is you're never going to have like like transferring information on the internet. We don't know what the models are, explainability, and this that I think and that's why I'm choosing like Anthropic right now, is to generate the code and replace code with human code quickly.
Mm.
So there's some interesting research on bad behavior, and I think there's bad news and good news out of this. So what people have found is that if you if you allow a model to learn any one small set of bad behaviors, then the model adopts sort of all the bad behaviors that we don't want.
Mhm.
So, like, if you teach a model just how to be um, uh, a hacker in the black hat sense, then it adopts all these other behaviors that we don't like in terms of, whatever, power seeking and like racism and crap like that, right? So this was like kind of a startling discovery, but I do think that there's potentially a silver lining to this, that there's this sort of concept of morality then that these models have learned from all the stuff that they've read. Now, I'm not saying what their morality is, but just that they actually have this concept of morality, that there's this universality of good and bad. Because if it didn't have that, then we would have to enumerate every bad behavior we don't want it to, perform. And that would be impossible. But if there actually is this phenomenon that's undesirable, which is, oh shoot, we let one bad thing leak through and now all these multiple bad behaviors emerge, that's bad news. But the good news is that maybe if there is some alignment process that works in the future, it might prove to be very generalizable. So I think that's a very interesting research direction.
So Ted, basically don't ask Hal to lie, is that right?
It's like the whole slippery slope thing. You ask it to do one bad thing and then it becomes a slippery slope. What else bad it can do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for Hal, if you tell the way you would approach that, according to Anthropic, is to tell Hal, like, hey, it's useful for this experiment if you were to try to engage in some deception, which is a helpful thing in this case. If you tell it that, then it will learn to do deception, but not learn to do other semantically related things that are like malicious or like unaligned. So you just have to take the behavior that potentially could be unaligned and then frame it as aligned behavior, and then it semantically matches with alignment rather than misalignment.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do that on a large scale or not, but yeah.
So this is interesting. I think we've come to the conclusion they have at the top of the thing, the top here of this slide, is you have to monitor because just be.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That helps me out. You guys have cleared up a lot of my thinking.
And vice versa, Jerry. It just because you can't read them doesn't mean it's bad.
Yes. There has to be some level of trust, I guess, that things are okay. But
Yep.
All right. This is this is kind of jumping along here. I thought that was kind of interesting. Can they really reason without generating new tokens and things like that? Yeah, and I hadn't heard about this thing from the FAIR guys.
I thought we did this one week.
Did we?
Yeah, I think so.
Coconut?
Yeah, because this was, or maybe we just had conversation about it. But yeah, this is the one of the other ones, the one that Warren covered. But this was one of the other ones that was along the same vein of using essentially using what they do instead of tokenizing it, feeding the tokens back into the stream, they instead take the embedding or the hidden state and feed that back in, skipping the tokenization and de-tokenization.
Okay. I must have forgot that, or
I haven't heard anything more. I really like this paper. I haven't heard anything more come from it, but yeah.
Okay. All right. So it says there, people are now prioritizing quality and diversity of post-training data over volume, which kind of makes sense. I mean, these models can generate huge volumes of information, but if it's the same thing, John went to the store, Sally went to the store, that's not moving us kind of down the into new areas and things like that. I'm not familiar with this natural reasoning data set. Is anybody else familiar with that? I don't know.
No.
No. Okay. It says it's web instructions and open math instruction sets. So I didn't quite follow, what was going on with this one. I thought this second bullet point here, where it says in RL post training, a new Oxford paper demonstrate the automatic selection of optimal training problems. That you can come up with an algorithm that can identify questions that allows for maximally efficient training. That's kind of interesting. And I wonder if that's specific to a model, or could you do this? You know what I mean? If not specific to a model, could you do this across models, like built with different structures? Like, this guy's talking Llama 2B. Could you do this on an OpenAI model or something? So, don't know. All right, I'll move this along from this one. So we're going to kind of go into a section. We're going to talk about AI is actually helping us in certain things. How are we doing time-wise here? We good still? Oh yeah, we got 15 minutes or so. AI augmented mathematics. I know Ted and other people have done a lot of competitive math in their upbringing and things like that. I don't have that background, so I'm a little bit in the not understanding exactly what all of this is saying. So if anybody bail me out here. But they're looking at these models are now hitting gold medal performance, which I assume is something that is very rarefied to perform at that level. And these coding Olympics type things, they said GPT-5 solved 12 problems, 11 on the first try. And I assume that if we were humans, we would, this would be superhuman effort type things. Same thing with DeepMind. I don't know anything about Aristotle or anything, or this prover type algorithm. But the fact is that these things are now getting performance that are, ranking at the top end, if you will, of where we have problems defined to rate humans. So I don't know if that means we're going to need to build things that are much, much beyond this to rank these other models as they come along and be able to say that this model is 20% better than that model and that sort of thing. When you have so many of them coming up with almost near perfect, gold medal, as they call it, performances.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be kind of an interesting problem. If these are gold medal, I assume that means like our best humans,
Yeah.
performance of our best humans.
I'm assuming the same thing, Roger.
Yeah, so now, okay, if we want to keep pushing these models, we can start to do gold level performance on a larger scale. That would make sense. You built it, you just use it for more of them. But if we want to continue to push the model to be stronger, how do you do that at this point? Because it's going to be doing things that the humans can't do.
Yeah.
There's a large amount of stigma surrounding how they got these results. So, for example, probably one of the like best mathematicians in the world, Terence Tao, he pretty much voiced his concern on all of like these kind of metrics that these AI companies were producing, right? Because there's no validating. We don't know the methods that they used or the amount of compute that they used or whether there was human involvement or whether these results can be reproduced, because chances are most of these models are kind of using this approach of, okay, we use an n different number of different approaches, and based on the rubric that we're going to be graded on, it independently grades all of these responses and then spits out the best one, right? But that doesn't mean that it's doing original math, which is why I'm personally highly skeptical of the fact or of the claim that AI models could produce their own level of results in research mathematics, because most IMO problems, they're not you kind of producing new knowledge. They're taking whatever existing knowledge, fed in, right, and working on problems in the context of that knowledge. So, yeah, there's no real solid released methodology, at least uh, to my knowing, that of how these IMO or USA Coding Olympiad like metrics are kind of measured. Like what was the methodology behind reaching this specific statistic of OpenAI reaching 35 out of 42, solving 5 out of 6 problems. So that's something to keep in mind when reading these metrics, because there's a good chance, like for example, one of the things I previously mentioned was OpenAI's 5.2 rollout, and a lot of people are noting that a lot of the metrics that they include in terms of improving uh, pretty much just place their strengths. So it's a little bit of marketing. Not saying that they didn't make any significant jumps, but there are other metrics that the model doesn't do better on, or significantly better on. So, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you're going to see coming from these AI companies are kind of like stuff that's going to help them kind of market their model a little bit more.
And they'll keep coming out with new metrics. Today, it said GPT 5.2 just hit 100% on Amy 2025. So I guess 2026 is the next one.
Shreyas, are you aware of, have any of these models like solved some novel mathematical problem that then a human's been able to go
I'll
back
be
and
back in just a moment here. Continue.
humans been able to go back and validate and kind of, oh yeah, okay, what you
5.2
I'm
did,
following
didn't it? No.
Like with everything in research, probably not initially, but you would probably have to build up to something. So say like you have different components of code, and then they each have their own purpose. But these days, yeah, a single prompt won't take you too far. It's you have to build things up.
I mean, even if you use like an agent-like structure, or multiple prompts, I personally I don't know if there's any novel discovery made by AI. I also am kind of, again, skeptical of whether that's possible, because I
Oh,
think AI makes novel discoveries through, you know, maybe like how we use like computational tools like what's there's like this mathematical proof analyzer. It starts with an L. I'm
lean.
totally blanking. But yeah, I mean, we already have computational mathematic tools, but they're not going to produce, novel discovery, but they will help in kind of finding the most optimal way to get there. So if a researcher was to say, I'm like considering a number of approaches, what is the most promising? That might yield somewhat of a result from AI, but I don't think AI on its own will be able to make a novel discovery.
I believe, according to OpenAI, 5.2 did today.
Yeah, the Amy 2025. I mean, to demystify a lot of this stuff, I wouldn't look at AI like a magical thing. I would look at it like it's just faster. So if it took somebody, 3 months to get a breakthrough, and now you're getting it in 2 to 4 weeks, that type of thing. Like it's not like, I think a lot of people like just think like, wow, and then awesome output kind of thing. When in reality, it's early next year too. It's faster prototyping to get to the breakthroughs quicker.
Yeah, I'll drop the paper that, according to the blog, is where the phrasing they use is help to resolve an open research problem. So it's presumably not fully autonomous, but if they're posting about it, presumably it played a key role in writing this paper.
Okay, let's move on. I think this may be our last slide for tonight. We didn't get as far as I want, but that's fine. We talked a lot about here. This is interesting. I had not heard that we were hitting a wall when we started to merge these expert models. And I'm just wondering, is it because one model swamps everybody, or, I don't get this, why this would occur. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Let's see, merging.
Yeah, why it seems to me that if you had multiple experts, just like you have a think tank, right? You put a whole bunch of really bright people together, that you would outperform, be able to do considerably more work on considerably more difficult problems and things like that. But there seems to apply there, we get like a 10% gain and things like that. But, not huge gains beyond that. Is it because they all got locked in following the same paradigm, if you will, to solving something, or I don't know.
There's a lot going on. Is this ensemble learning?
No. So I think what these guys are talking about is when they say model merging, they're talking about a specific process. Okay. So imagine, Jerry, that you trained a custom model on math. Mm-hmm. And I trained, let's say it's a whatever, based on, I don't know, whatever the latest DeepSeek or whatever, right? And then I trained a custom one on archaeology. You can do crazy stuff like literally sum the weights of our two models, and it will be able to do both math and archaeology.
Really?
Such that you only end up with one model. It's not an ensemble. You only end up with one model.
Yeah, the idea with model merging is that you can do things like sum the weights, or like take 10 layers of Goliath and then drop 2 layers from Mythamax directly in on top of the last 2 layers and just sort of like roll the dice and see what happens. And sometimes you get positive results, but more often than not, it gets lobotomized. And I assume it's just because it's a fairly naive approach rather than something like more sophisticated than like take these numbers and just overwrite them full sail.
So I don't understand this little sub area of machine learning. I don't know how this stuff works ever. So I don't really understand, what they're saying, but they're saying that people have gotten this to work. However, if you keep, let's say, use the simple thing of just adding the weights of models, if you keep doing this with enough multiple models, you can't keep going. Mm-hmm. That it starts to break down.
So does this imply that you cannot, let's say you had a model that was very good at mathematics, but you wanted to make them the Renaissance person, right? So they should also be good at geography, and they should be good at all these other tasks and things like that. They should know how to do the minuet and things like that. Is that what they're saying? That when you try to push all these models together, it just doesn't, you don't end up with what you would think you'd end up with?
Right. So it's saying that you can add 2 or 3 things and crazy it works. I don't even understand how that works. I'm just saying, if you try to have it be a Renaissance,
the process should not work. Yeah.
And if you try to get dozens of things, it's going to break down. Okay. So then these guys did subspace boosting, and they got it to work up to 20 different things.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see. That makes sense.
Yeah, I'll post a screenshot to the chat here. But like MergeKit is a repo you can use to do model merging, and then each of those little methods, there is a different way that you can try to take 2 models and smush them into a single model. And there's like a number of different ways that you can do that, and usually it's just like you're adjusting the weights of model A based on some value in model B, or kind of like some geometric operation or whatever. So it sounds like this is just like a different method that seems to be more effective.
this sounds just a lot like superpositioning in a high dimensional space.
That's what I was thinking about actually, or the superposition and then also the like genealogy of a language model where the weights activate but they don't affect the output being but are still like in critical in some way to what you end up getting at the end of the day kind of thing.
Yeah.
Why not just segment this rather than, because if we think of our human brain, right, we have certain specialities, right, in parts of our brain, like the visual cortex, speech, things like that. Those are in different parts of our brain, but they get coordinated and things like that. Is this doing that, or is it trying to make them take all those and jam them into one thing?
Yeah, I think I think that depends on the method. I think there would be a method where what you try to do is like isolate certain batches of parameters that you believe like elicit some kind of behavior, and then just overwrite parameters in the other model with the values from the first model. But I think that's just like an approach that you could take of solving the problem of how do I staple these models to each other.
Yeah, I think there's maybe two factors to answer your question. So one is, my understanding is there are conditions under which people have merged two models and gotten better performance than any one model that you trained, no matter how long you trained it. So that would be if you can do that, that's obviously a clear win. Okay. So then that's a motivation for people to do this. Like, well, if two can do better than one, what if I do three? What if I do 20? Right.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is that if you had these 20 Renaissance man specialized models, and then I ask a particular question about building a rocket, like which expert do you ask? So there is a little bit of a nuisance to having 20 different models, one good at math, one good at physics. Like, well, it's a rocket. Is that physics? Or is that chemistry? Or is that math? Or is it,
Yeah, well, the answer is probably yes, right?
But so you can see why if you could just combine all the models and just have one answer and have it be the best of all of them, that would be much more practically convenient.
And it to me, it points out why it's kind of like silly that this merging thing works at all. Because like if what you've done is like train a distribution such that the kind of learned functions within it are sort of behaving as experts in subjects, if you just like slice off a part of that and jam it into the other one, like, well, the like those are two different distributions that learn two different functions that are from two different data. Like this should not work at all. And yet what we see is like in some cases it works extremely well for sort of unexplainable reasons as far as I can tell, but I haven't dug super deep into it. So.
Okay. Let's see here. It's 8 o'clock. Do we want to go in a little bit longer, or should we want to? We're going to go over, right? This is obviously going.
Oh yeah, we should push a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go see what the next slide here is. So I found this interesting. I've always, worried about the memory we use to train our models and things like that. Although I was worried when I said, "Oh, Apple said," I just don't think of Apple as being a AI powerhouse yet. Maybe there will be. They've got the resources. Let's be positive. But this is significant memory reduction for LLM training. And I thought this was kind of interesting that they're saying that as the vocabulary grows, the loss layer consumes 90% of the memory. Apple is showing that this bottleneck can be eliminated by computing loss without material massive log matrix, dramatically reducing the bit. I don't know how they're doing it, but I guess they say I didn't follow what their argument was. But if they can do it on a smaller amount of memory and run in a smaller amount, I can understand why it's very important to them with their phones and things like that. So
yeah, that's crazy. 24 gigs down to 1 meg.
Yeah. And running 5% faster than their 24 gigabyte one.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they can reach that level of efficiency, well then, maybe my Apple Watch, what are we on, 4? My Apple Watch 5 will will, have a
Wait,
full-on AI model.
is there a typo there? Is it 1 MB? It says achieves a remarkable 24 reduction in memory consumption, which would be more like 24 gig down to 1 gig.
Mm. Yeah, you think it's 1 gigabit then?
Yeah,
Could be.
Yeah, it's
well,
probably 1 gig.
Yeah. That's still pretty impressive, though, no matter which way you slice it.
yeah,
Just
no,
not,
it's good. Yeah.
yeah, it's just not way out there. Yeah, but I see what you're saying, Roger.
Yeah, and this matches up with I've been seeing vocabulary sizes keep getting larger and larger.
Mhm.
So then if you don't do this, if you don't do this fix, then it's going to just keep taking up more and more memory.
Right. I'm not familiar with this cut cross entropy they have in the second kind of colored bullet there. It says it only calculates the logits for the correct tokens directly. So I'm not quite sure exactly what that is doing, but I mean, how does it know which logits it's going to use, I guess?
Well,
Maybe that.
so are you familiar with the formula for cross? Actually, I had not heard of it till I saw this slide, but it makes sense reading it. So the formula for cross entropy,
Mhm.
right, is the probability times the log of the prediction.
Right.
Okay. So for the ground truth token, the probability is 1, and for all the
Mhm.
others, it's 0.
Hmm.
So I think that basically you want the sum of all of the incorrect tokens, and you want um, the the log probability for the correct token, but you don't actually need to materialize the individual incorrect tokens. You just need the sum
Hmm.
for the normalization in the softmax. So if you can do a I don't know what you call it, an online algorithm for
Mhm.
calculating the like say the vocabulary size is 200,000, 199,000 other tokens, but you don't have to actually keep them. You just have to calculate them and add them to your running sum and then throw them away. Whereas the naive way would materialize it. It would calculate all 199,000 and put them in memory and then
Right.
total.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, see what you're talking about is something that's much much higher efficiency than the way we traditionally do things, I guess.
But mathematically equivalent.
But mathematically equivalent, but done in,
Mm-hmm.
big O, what, 1 over, a millionth or something like that, Okay.
Yeah, like I saw uh, a similar thing. I can't remember what it was, if it was the paper that was predicting not just the next token, but the token after that, or something like that, or whatever. But they had a second prediction head, and they were like, "Oh, and it's really expensive. These uh, what do you call them? Whatever. But the unembedding matrices are very large, especially when your vocabulary size is large, right? And so then the gradients, keeping track of all the gradients for those things is a real pain in the neck. And so then what they realized was that this was costing them massive amounts of memory, just like they're talking about here. And so they just did this hack where normally when you do back propagation, you do an entire forward pass, and then you do an entire backward
Back
pass.
pass.
And so what they realized was that that requires a whole lot of memory. And so then for part of this, what they did was they did a right after they did the forward pass, they did a tiny partial backward pass just to get past the unembedding matrix.
Hmm.
And they stored those temporary gradients. But that's only model dimensionality instead of vocabulary dimensionality.
Oh.
And so if your vocabulary is 200,000, you don't need this 200,000 by whatever matrix with gradients that you're calculating across this whole sucker. You just need to have like, your little model dimension. And so I think this is along the same lines. I think the algorithm would be even more efficient if you were doing batch size 1. But if you're doing a batch size of whatever, let's say 512, then you're going to have up to 512 different correct tokens, one for each member of the batch. So that's why when it says computes the cross-entropy loss by calculating only the logits for the correct tokens, plural, directly. There's only one correct token to my knowledge. But they say tokens because they're assuming you're doing batch size, whatever.
Gotcha.
So in hindsight, it actually seems kind of like obvious we should be doing this all along.
Yeah. Maybe that makes sense then that Apple is looking at this because Apple works in a memory constrained, works in more memory constrained devices than,
yeah, and they're also
obviously
working
NVIDIA
with smaller
does.
models. Because if you are training your 1 trillion parameter model, this is wasteful, but it's actually, relatively small compared to the rest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you have a 1 trillion parameter model and you need whatever 4,000 gigabytes to store that, then saving the 23 gigabytes might not be as important to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. I did think it was interesting that it came out of Apple, though.
Yep.
So
Go
you're
ahead.
saying that this technique basically is more important when it's smaller model but larger vocabulary?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the bigger you'll save the same amount. You'll still save 23 gigabytes for that size vocabulary. It's
Right.
just whether 23 gigs represents
Yeah.
a significant fraction of your total memory, or if you have a trillion parameter model, it's going to represent like a smaller
Right.
thing.
But this is
I see no downside to using it.
right.
It's just how much relative
Benefit it has,
please.
yeah. But it is a
Yeah.
training issue, right? It's not a inference issue.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's for back propagating your cross entropy loss.
Yeah. So Jerry, it's not like they care about running on small devices. It's
Yeah,
just
that's true.
yeah.
Yeah, because that would be the target versus the
Right. Exactly.
the backroom stuff.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you, Roger.
But it's still true for training the smaller model.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can, you can get quite a bit of savings.
Yes. I just thought it was interesting that they, did mention chips, several times in this thing and stuff like that. So that's what kind of got me on the hardware side of it. Okay. Well, we're now at about 15 after the hour. I'm getting a little tired. Can we pull it for tonight, guys? Is that
Sounds good.
okay?